I saw my daughter-in-law throw a leather suitcase into the lake and walk away without looking back. I ran toward the water and used all my strength to pull the soaked suitcase out. My hands were trembling so badly I almost dropped it. Then I heard a faint sound coming from inside. "Please don't be what I think it is." I whispered, my fingers shaking as I tried to open the wet zipper. It was stuck, but finally came loose, and in that moment, my heart stopped. What I saw inside wiped every thought from my mind. But before I go on, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. My name is Hannah Carter, 63 years old, and I've lived alone ever since burying my only son, Richard, 8 months ago. My husband passed years earlier, so the house has been quiet for a long time. The small lake house in rural Michigan that once echoed with laughter and memories is now filled only with silence. That afternoon, as I sat on the porch sipping tea, a silver car appeared on the dirt road leading to the lake. It was my daughter-in-law Sylvie's car. She was driving recklessly too fast for that narrow, winding road. A chill of dread ran through me. I set my teacup on the railing and squinted. Sylvie slammed the brakes near the edge of the water, leaving the engine running. She got out as if someone were chasing her. Her face was flushed, her hair a mess. She yanked open the trunk so hard I thought it would rip off. Then I saw at the brown leather suitcase I had given her on her wedding day with Richard. "Take your dreams wherever life leads you." I had told her then how naive that sounded now. Sylvie pulled the suitcase out. It was heavy, her body straining, arms shaking. She looked around, her eyes darting nervously, guilt written all over her face. I'll never forget that image. "Sylvie," I shouted from the porch, but she didn't hear or pretended not to. She kept walking toward the lake. Each step looked like a battle, not just against the weight of the suitcase, but against whatever horror pressed on her soul. She swung the suitcase a few times, then hurled it into the water. The splash shattered the quiet of the afternoon. It floated for a few seconds before slowly sinking. Sylvie ran back to her car, slammed the door, and sped off, tires grinding against the gravel, leaving only a trail of dust and unbearable stillness behind. I stood frozen for several seconds. What had I just witnessed? Sylvie, the suitcase, the lake, that desperate look on her face, it all sent a chill down my spine despite the humid air. My legs began to move before my mind could catch up. I rushed down the steps across the grass toward the dirt road. The lake was about 100 yards away. I ran faster than I thought I could, my knees aching, lungs burning, but I didn't stop. When I reached the shore, gasping for breath, my heart pounding, I saw the suitcase still bobbing, slowly sinking. The leather was dark, drenched, and heavy. I didn't hesitate. I waded into the water. It was colder than I expected, rising to my knees, then my waist. Mud sucked at my feet. I reached out, grabbed the handle, and pulled. It was unbelievably heavy. I tugged harder, my arms trembling from exhaustion. Water splashed into my face, soaking my clothes. Finally, I managed to drag the suitcase onto the shore. Then I heard it again, a faint, muffled sound from inside. My blood ran cold. No, please. God, no. I pulled faster, more desperately, dragging it onto the damp sand and collapsing beside it. My hands shook as I fumbled with the zipper. It was stuck, wet, rusted. "Come on," I muttered through clenched teeth, tears blurring my vision. I tried once, twice, and at last it opened. When the lid flipped back, the world around me stopped. My heart went hollow. My breath caught in my throat. I pressed a hand over my mouth to stifle the scream rising inside me. Inside, wrapped in a soaked blue blanket, was a baby. Tiny, newborn, frighteningly still, at first glance cold to the touch, barely moving. Oh God. My hands trembled so badly I almost dropped it. I lifted the baby from the suitcase with all the tenderness I thought I had lost. The body was cold light as a small sandbag. Its tiny head fit into the palm of my hand. The umbilical cord was still attached, tied with a thin piece of string. No medical clamp, as if someone had done this in secret, in desperation, without help. No, no, I whispered. I pressed my ear to its chest. Silence. I leaned close and felt the faintest breath. It was there. The baby was still breathing, weak but alive. I stood clutching it to my chest. My legs nearly gave out. I ran home faster than I ever had before. Water streamed from my clothes, my bare feet cut and bleeding on the gravel. But I felt nothing except fear and determination to save that fragile life. I burst into the house shouting words that barely made sense. Maybe help, maybe dear God. I held the baby tight with one arm and grabbed the phone with the other, dialing 911. My fingers slipped, nearly dropping it. A woman's voice answered. "What's your emergency?" I shouted. "A baby, I just found a baby in the lake. It's not responding, it's cold, it's purple. Please send help now. Stay calm, ma'am. Give me your address." I stammered out the address of my lakeside home in Michigan. She instructed me to place the baby on a flat surface. I swept everything off the kitchen table, plates, papers, crashing to the floor, and laid the baby down. So tiny, so still. "Is it breathing?" she asked. "Check the chest for movement." I leaned close and saw the faintest rise. "Yes, barely." "Good. Listen carefully. Take a clean towel, dry the baby gently, then wrap it to keep warm. The ambulance is on its way." I obeyed. I ran to the bathroom, grabbed towels, dried the tiny body with trembling hands. Every second felt endless. I wrapped the baby in a clean towel, held it against my chest, rocking instinctively, an old reflex I hadn't felt in years. "Hang on, sweetheart, please don't give up, they're coming." The minutes waiting for the ambulance were the longest of my life. I sat on the kitchen floor, cradling the baby, humming softly. Maybe an old lullaby I used to sing to Richard. Maybe just a sound to fill the silence. I only wanted the baby to know it wasn't alone, that someone was holding it, hoping it would live. Then the siren wailed outside, red and white lights flashing through the window. I ran to open the door. 2 paramedics rushed out, an older man with gray flecked beard and a young woman with her brown hair tied back. The woman took the baby from my arms, moving with such calm urgency it broke my heart. She listened with a stethoscope, then said to her partner, "Severe hypothermia, possible water inhalation. We need to move now." They placed the baby on a small stretcher, fitted an oxygen mask, attached tubes, monitors. The man looked at me. "You're coming with us, right?" It wasn't a question. I climbed into the ambulance, sitting beside them. I couldn't take my eyes off the tiny form among all those wires. The siren blared. The world blurred past. The young nurse asked, "Where did you find him?" "In a suitcase," one I answered. "Under the water, I saw someone throw it in." She looked at me, then at her partner, her eyes mixed with worry and disbelief. "Did you see who?" My mouth opened and closed before I finally whispered, "Yes, Sylvie, my daughter. In-law Richard's wife, the woman who cried so hard at my son's funeral. It was her." I could hardly believe my own words, but they were true. We reached the hospital in minutes. The emergency doors burst open. Doctors in blue and white coats surrounded the stretcher, shouting medical terms and numbers. They pushed the baby through double doors. I tried to follow, but a nurse stopped me. "You need to wait here. They're working on the baby. We'll need some information." She led me to a waiting room. Cream walls, plastic chairs, the sharp smell of disinfectant. I sat down, shaking all over, from cold, from shock. Maybe both. The nurse sat across from me, gentle-faced, her name tag reading, "Nurse Sophia, please." she said softly. Tell me everything. I told her everything from the moment I saw Sylv's car to the second I opened the suitcase. Sophia took notes, nodding without interruption. When I finished, she sighed. The police will need to speak with you. This is a criminal case and it's serious. The police will need to speak with you right away. The words attempted murder hung heavy in the air. My daughter-in-law, my son's wife, a killer. I couldn't comprehend it. Sophia placed a hand over mine. You did the right thing. You saved a life today. But inside, I didn't feel like a savior. I felt like I had opened a door to a nightmare that could never be closed again. 2 hours later, a young doctor came to see me. He looked about 35, dark circles under his eyes, the smell of sanitizer still on his hands. The baby's stable, he said. We've moved him to the neonatal intensive care unit. Severe hypothermia, water in the lungs. The next 48 hours will be critical. I choked out. Will it live? He hesitated. I don't know, but we'll do everything we can. Half an hour later, the police arrived, a woman in her 40s, with her hair in a tight bun, and a younger male officer taking notes. The woman introduced herself as Detective Laura Johnson. Her eyes were sharp cold, as if they could cut through lies. They questioned me again and again in different ways. I described the car, the time Sylvie's every movement, the suitcase, everything. Laura watched me so intently I felt guilty though I'd done nothing wrong. You're certain it was your daughter? In law, absolutely certain. Why would she do this? I don't know. Do you know where she is now? No. When did you last speak to her 3 weeks ago? On the day of my son's memorial. Laura scribbled notes, exchanged a look with her partner. Tomorrow you'll need to come to the station to give a full statement, and do not contact Sylvie. Understand? I nodded. What else could I do? Why would you want to kill a baby? Why throw it away like trash? Those questions kept echoing in my mind. When they left, Nurse Sophia returned with a blanket and a cup of tea. She urged me to go home, change clothes, rest, but I couldn't leave. I couldn't abandon that baby fighting for life in the next room, the fragile little being that had almost stopped breathing in my arms. Sophia brought me dry clothes from the hospital supply closet, scrub pants, and an oversized t-shirt. I changed in the restroom and barely recognized the woman in the mirror looking 10 years older than she had that morning. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in the plastic chair watching the clock, standing every hour to ask about the baby. The answer was always the same, stable but critical, still fighting. Around 3 a.m., Father Thomas, the priest from my church, appeared. Someone must have called him. He sat beside me in silence. Sometimes just having another person near is enough to remind you that you're not entirely alone in hell. Finally, he spoke softly. God tests us in many ways. This doesn't feel like a test, I whispered. It feels like a curse. He nodded, not trying to argue, and I appreciated that more than any sermon. When the first rays of dawn broke through the window, I knew my life would never be the same. I had crossed a line, seen something I could never unsee, and whatever happened next, I had to face it. Because that baby, that fragile little life, fighting for every breath in the room next door, was now my responsibility. I hadn't chosen it, but I couldn't walk away. Not after pulling it from the water, not after feeling its faint heartbeat against my chest. When the sun rose, soft orange light filled the waiting room. I had been sitting all night on that plastic chair, my back aching, eyes burning, but I couldn't leave. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the suitcase sinking into the water, the still tiny body, the purple lips. By 7:00 a.m., Sophia brought me coffee and a foil-wrapped sandwich. You should eat something, she said, placing them in my hands. I wasn't hungry, but I ate because she stood there waiting. The coffee burned my tongue. The sandwich tasted like paper, but I swallowed anyway, pretending to be a normal person on a normal morning. "The baby is still stable," Sophia said, sitting beside me. "Body temperature has risen. The lungs are responding to treatment." "That's a good sign." "Can I see him?" I asked. "Not yet. Only immediate family. And we still don't know who the baby's family is." The word family made my chest tighten. This baby had to have one, a mother, Sylvie, but she had tried to kill him. What about the father? Where was he? Why hadn't anyone reported a missing child? The questions kept coming with no answers. At 9:00 a.m., Detective Laura returned, this time alone. She sat across from me, holding a file, her eyes sharp and cold. "Mrs. Carter, I need to ask a few more questions. I've already told you everything." "I know, but there are a few inconsistencies." The word inconsistencies felt like an accusation. My stomach twisted. What kind of inconsistencies? Laura took out a photo and laid it on the table. It was Sylv's car, but parked in a supermarket lot, not by the lake. This image was captured on a security camera earlier that day. The timestamp may not be reliable, but the vehicle and plate match Sylvie's car. My heart froze. 5:20 meant 10 minutes after I saw her by the lake. Impossible. I looked closer. The license plate matched Sylv's car. That can't be right. There must be a mistake. I saw her. I saw her throw that suitcase, I said, though my voice faltered. Laura leaned forward. "Be honest with me. What was your relationship with Sylvie like? Were you two on good terms?" That was the question she'd been waiting for. "No, we never got along. From the moment Richard brought her home, I sensed something off, too perfect, too polished, too focused on the money my son earned." "We weren't close," I admitted. "Do you blame her for your son's death?" What I snapped, defensive. "I'm asking if you think Sylvie was responsible for the accident." The accident. Everyone called it that. Richard was driving home after dinner with Sylvie. It was raining. The car skidded and hit a tree. My son died instantly while Sylvie escaped with minor scratches. I always found it strange, too convenient, but I had no proof. Just a grieving mother looking for someone to blame. "I don't see how that's related to the baby," I said. "It's related," Laura replied, closing the file. "Because we can't find Sylvie. She's gone." Her house was empty. Her phone turned off, and I was the only one who claimed to have seen her yesterday. Laura's words hit me like cold water. She didn't say it outright, but I could feel it. She suspected me, that I'd made everything up, that I'd found the baby somewhere and blamed Sylvie out of revenge. "I'm not lying," I said through clenched teeth. "I saw what I saw," Laura replied. "Then we have to find Sylvie as soon as possible. If she's the baby's mother, he's in danger, and if she's not, we have an even bigger mystery." She stood and handed me her card. "Call me if you remember anything." Then she left, leaving me with 100 questions. I stared at the card, wondering if I was losing my mind. I had seen Sylvie. I was sure, but doubt crept in like poison. What if I was wrong? What if it had been someone else? What if grief and anger made me see what I wanted to see? Father Thomas returned around noon, rosary beads in hand. "Shall we pray?" he asked. I was never deeply religious, but at that moment I needed something greater than myself, a sign that I wasn't alone. I nodded and we prayed in silence. The familiar words calmed me, though I didn't understand how. When we finished, I said, "The police think I'm lying," he replied. "The truth always comes out. It just takes time." But we didn't have time. That baby was fighting for his life, and Sylvia, wherever she was either hiding or planning her next move. Around 3:00 p.m., another doctor came to see me, an older woman with thick glasses and a stern face. "We need your signature to perform some tests on the baby," she said. "I'm not family. We know, but you're currently the only one taking responsibility. The social worker is on her way, but we need to act now. The baby needs blood tests, screenings for possible illnesses, exposure to substances or hidden injuries. I signed without reading. I just wanted them to do whatever was needed to save him. 2 hours later, the social worker arrived. Her name was Marcia Young, maybe 25, short hair, gray suit, and a professional smile that never reached her eyes. "Mrs. Carter," she said, sitting beside me, "I need to ask a few questions about your situation. I understand you were the one who found the baby. The same story again, the same questions. But Marco was different." Her eyes held pity, not suspicion, which somehow felt worse. "Do you live alone?" "Yes." "Do you have a stable income?" "I receive my late husband's pension and have some savings." "Any criminal record?" "No." "Any psychological issues, depression, anxiety?" I hesitated. After Richard died, I took antidepressants for 3 months. The doctor said it was normal. I stopped once I felt better. I was depressed, but I'm not anymore. Marcia wrote something I couldn't see. "Once the baby recovers, we'll need to place him in temporary care," she said. "When discharged, he'll go to a certified foster family. For now, he'll be under state guardianship." State guardianship. Those words shattered me. The baby I had held, whose faint breath I'd felt, would now be handed to strangers, reduced to a case file, a number. "What if I want to?" I blurted out. "What if I want to care for him?" Marcia looked at me, surprise flickering into doubt. "Mrs. Carter, you're 63 years old, not certified to foster, have no legal connection to the child, and are currently part of an ongoing criminal investigation. I haven't done anything wrong," I said, voice trembling. "I saved his life." "I understand," she replied gently, "but the system has procedures. The baby's best interest always comes first. Honestly, your age and recent emotional state are factors we must consider." Her words felt like a slap. Too old, too unstable, too broken. Maybe she was right. Maybe it was foolish of me. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw that fragile little body again. I knew no one in this world could love that child the way I could. That evening, after 36 hours, I finally went home. Sophia persuaded me. "You need to shower, sleep in a real bed. The baby will be fine. We'll call if anything changes." I drove home as the sun was setting, the golden light spreading across the lake beside the road. I stopped at the exact spot where I'd seen Sylvie, where I had pulled that suitcase out. The police had taken it as evidence, but I could still see where it had lain. Even the prints of my shoes dried into the mud. I stood there watching the sun fade, wondering if I'd ever learn the truth, if Sylvie was watching from somewhere, and what had really happened. Then my phone rang. It was the hospital. My heart stopped. Sophia's voice came through. "Mrs. Carter, you need to come back right now." I turned the car around, speeding faster than I ever had, my hands shaking on the wheel, my heart pounding louder than the engine. Sophia didn't give details, only that I needed to return immediately. Those 2 words, "right now," filled my mind with the worst possibilities. The baby had died. That had to be it. Why else would they call in such a hurry? He had fought for 2 days, but his small body couldn't take it anymore. I wasn't fast enough, wasn't good enough to save him. I parked crookedly across 2 spaces and ran straight into the emergency entrance. Sophia was waiting, her face serious, but there was something else in her eyes, something I couldn't read. "The baby's alive," she said quickly, as if reading my mind. "He's alive, but you need to come with me." She led me through unfamiliar corridors, up to the 3rd floor, past the intensive care unit, and into a small conference room. Inside were Detective Laura, the social worker, Marcia, and an older man, maybe 60, wearing a dark suit and glasses. He looked like a lawyer. "Please sit," Laura said, gesturing to the chair. My legs shook as I sat. They all stared at me, serious, almost grave. We have the baby's DNA results, Laura said. The words fell heavy like a stone hitting still water. DNA, I didn't understand why they'd done that. What were you looking for? I asked as the silence thickened. Laura looked at the man in the suit. He nodded, opened a file, and slid a few papers toward me. The baby is a boy, a newborn, only a day or two old, and Laura paused. He's your grandson. The world seemed to stop. I heard the words, but my mind couldn't process them. My grandson, impossible. Richard died 8 months ago. He had no children. No one was pregnant. That can't be, I whispered. The man spoke. The results are conclusive. I'm Dr. Scott Harris, forensic genetic specialist. We tested twice to be sure. The baby shares about 25% of his DNA with you. He is your biological grandson, Richard's son. Richard's son. My blood turned to ice. Richard had a child he never knew about, a baby someone had tried to drown. But how Richard's been gone 8 months, I said faintly. Sylvie never mentioned being pregnant. Exactly, Laura said, leaning forward. Sylvie was pregnant at the time of the accident, based on the timeline she conceived about a month before Richard's death, meaning she knew. The room spun around me. Sylvie knew she was pregnant. So why didn't she tell anyone? Why hide it for 9 months, give birth in secret, then try to kill her own baby? I broke down. Why would she do that? That's her child, Richard's child, Laura said softly. We don't know yet, but there's more, Hannah. I need you to stay calm. I clenched my hands in my lap, bracing for the worst. We reviewed your son's accident. There are irregularities. What kind of irregularities? I asked. Laura continued. Richard's car was inspected after the crash. The official report said he skidded on wet pavement. But when we re-examined the vehicle, there was evidence the brake system had been tampered with. Someone sabotaged the car. I went numb. Sabotage murder. My son didn't die in an accident. He was killed. Sylvie, I whispered. Not a question. Laura nodded. She's our main suspect, but we need proof and we have to find her. Sylvie has completely vanished. No phone activity, no bank withdrawals. It's as if she disappeared from the world. I stood and walked to the window. Outside, city lights glowed as if nothing had changed. People were living their normal lives while I was trapped in a nightmare. My son, I murmured. She killed my son. No one replied. There were no words left. Marcia gently placed a hand on my shoulder. There's something else you need to know, she said softly. About the baby. I turned toward her. Her eyes were full of sorrow. Since he's your biological grandson, you have legal rights to apply for custody. But she lifted a hand. It's a long process. Psychological evaluations, home inspections, interviews. And during that time, the baby will remain under state care. No. The word burst out of me like a roar. No one is taking him away from me. He's all I have left of Richard. He's my blood. Marcia's voice softened. I understand truly, but the law has procedures, and we have to ensure the baby's absolute safety. He'll be safer with me than with anyone else, I pleaded. Maybe she admitted, but the decision lies with the court. Dr. Harris spoke up. There's something else. The baby sustained severe injuries, hypothermia near drowning. The coming weeks are critical for his development. He'll need specialized treatment and constant medical supervision. I'll do whatever it takes, I said. Anything. Laura stood. Hannah, we believe you. You're not a suspect, but you can't just keep the baby because he's your grandson. We need your help finding Sylvie. Did she ever mention a special place, family, friends, property where she could hide? I closed my eyes, trying to remember. During the 3 years Sylvie lived with Richard, we barely spoke. She rarely mentioned her past or her family, as if she'd appeared from nowhere. She had an aunt, I said slowly. up north near the border. Richard once told me Sylvie was raised by her. Laura quickly wrote in her notebook, "Name I don't know, Richard never said." "It's still a lead," Laura replied. "Well, look into it." Then they all left one by one, leaving only Sophia with me in the cold, empty room. "Would you like to see your grandson?" she asked. I nodded, unable to speak. She led me through several security doors to the neonatal intensive care unit, had me wash my hands and put on a sterile gown. In the corner inside an incubator lay the baby my grandson, Richard's son. Tiny, fragile, covered in tubes and wires, yet still breathing, still alive, still fighting. He had dark hair and Richard's nose and long, slender fingers, just like his father's. "Can I touch him?" I whispered. "Yes, but gently." I slipped my hand through the opening of the incubator and touched his little palm. His skin was soft and warm, his tiny fingers wrapped around my index finger. It was only a reflex, but to me it felt like a promise. "Hello, little one," I whispered. "I'm your grandmother. I promise to protect you, to never let anyone hurt you. I swear it on your father's soul." Sophia placed a hand on my shoulder. "He needs a name," she said softly, "for hospital records, until the court makes a decision." I remembered that last Christmas when Richard said, "If I ever have a son, I'll name him Matthew after my grandfather." I whispered, "Matthew, your name is Matthew." I stayed all night beside the incubator, holding his hand, singing the same lullabies I once sang to Richard. I made Matthew promises about a future I wasn't sure I could give, but I made them anyway, because now I knew the truth. This baby wasn't a stranger I'd accidentally rescued. He was blood family, the last piece of my son left in this world, and I would never let anyone take him away. Not the system, not Sylvie, no one. The days that followed were a nightmare of paperwork and bureaucracy. Every morning I woke at 5:00 a.m., showered, ate a quick breakfast, then drove to the hospital. I sat beside Matthew's incubator until evening, when lawyers, social workers, and police arrived, each with their folders, each with their questions, each deciding whether I was fit to care for my own flesh and blood. By the third day, Marcia returned with a long list. She read it in a flat voice like reading appliance instructions. "We'll need a criminal background check, full psychological evaluation, medical exam, proof of income, home inspection, 3 reference letters from non-relatives, and completion of a 40-hour child care course." 40 hours. As if I hadn't already raised a child, as if I didn't know how to change a diaper or warm a bottle. But I said nothing, just nodded, and took the stack of papers. "How long will it take?" I asked. "If we're lucky, 6 weeks, if not 3 months. 3 months. That meant Matthew would stay in foster care for 3 months, while I jumped through hoops to prove I was worthy of raising my own grandson. And in the meantime, I asked Marka, replied once discharged, he'll be placed with a licensed foster family. He'll receive proper care, and you'll be allowed to visit twice a week under supervision. Twice a week under supervision. As if I were a danger, as if I hadn't pulled that baby from the lake with my own hands. That night, I called Father Thomas. I needed someone to be a reference, someone to vouch that I wasn't crazy, that I was capable, that I could do this. He came the next day, sat in my kitchen, sipping the tea I used to make for Richard when he was a boy. "Of course I'll help you," he said. "You're one of the strongest women I know. That baby's lucky to have you, but I didn't feel strong. I felt old, tired, and scared. I was 63. When he turned 2, would I still have the strength to chase after him? When he entered middle school, I'd be 70. Could I help him with homework? If I lived to 80, would I see him graduate? I'm too old for this," I finally said out loud. Father Thomas looked at me over his teacup and smiled. "Sarah was 90 when she gave birth to Isaac. Age is only a number when your heart still loves." I wanted to believe him. I truly did. By the fourth day, Sophia began teaching me how to care for Matthew, how to support his head change diapers, prepare formula at the right temperature. My hands trembled at first. I had forgotten how fragile newborns were, how dependent they were. Each time I hesitated, Sophia said, "You're doing great." But I didn't feel great. Everything felt like walking on thin ice. One wrong move and it would all collapse. On the fifth day, Laura returned with news. "We found Sylv's aunt," she said. "She lives in a small town near the northern border. We met her. She hasn't seen Sylvie in 2 years. They fought over money. Sylvie owed her $3,000 and never repaid it. Money again. It was always about money with Sylvie. Richard earned a decent income." Laura continued. "Around $7,000 a month. He had savings and a life insurance policy worth $200,000. Sylvia was the beneficiary. I asked, "Did she get the money?" Laura nodded. 4 months ago, $200,000 were transferred to her account. 2 weeks later, the entire amount was wired to an anonymous account in the Cayman Islands. We're tracking it, but it's difficult. $200,000, the price of my son's life. And while hiding that money in a tax haven, she had planned to murder her own child. Why, I asked the question that haunted every sleepless night. She could have given the baby up for adoption, left him at a hospital. Why try to kill him? Laura stayed silent for a long moment. Then she said, "We have a theory." When reviewing Richard's finances, we discovered that 2 weeks before his death, he changed his will. All assets were to go to his future child, not to Sylvie. I froze. Richard knew. Somehow, my son had learned she was pregnant and wanted to protect the baby. "She killed him for money," I whispered. "We believe so," Laura said. And when she realized the inheritance would go to the baby if it was born alive, she decided to eliminate him, too. The cruelty of that act left me speechless. She had murdered my son, carried the pregnancy to term, then tried to kill her own newborn, all for money. "Do you have enough evidence to arrest her?" I asked. "Once we find her." "Yes," Laura replied, "but she's still missing." "Smart cautious, she knows we're looking." Time passed. Days became weeks. Matthew grew stronger. The doctors removed one tube after another. He started breathing on his own drinking milk, crying louder and clearer. A true miracle. According to the doctors, no child who had gone through what he did had ever recovered so quickly. But I believed it wasn't just medicine. It was Richard's strength, his spirit living inside that tiny body, fighting, refusing to give up. I completed every requirement. My background check came back clean. My health exam passed. The psychological evaluation was tougher. A young woman with glasses questioned me for 3 hours. "How do you cope with your son's death? How do you feel about Sylvie? Are you trying to replace Richard with this baby?" That last question made me furious. I'm not replacing anyone, I said. I'm saving my grandson. Those are two different things. She wrote something down and I couldn't tell if it was good or bad. The home inspection felt humiliating. 2 inspectors went through every corner, opened cabinets, checked the refrigerator, measured window. Safety counted smoke detectors. They asked about a fire escape plan. You'll need a certified crib, a changing table, safety locks on the stairs, cabinet latches, and outlet covers. I spent thousands of dollars on baby supplies. My pension barely covered basic living costs, so I had to dip into my savings, but I didn't regret it. Matthew was worth it. The childcare class was the worst part. 15 young mothers and me. They looked at me like I didn't belong there. The instructor, barely 25, spoke painfully slowly about the basics. Infants need to eat every 3 hours. Babies cry when hungry or wet. Never shake a baby. I nodded and took notes. Even though I wanted to scream that I had raised a son to adulthood, I knew what I was doing. But I needed that certificate. So I swallowed my pride and continued. 6 weeks after the day I pulled Matthew from the lake, Marka came to the hospital with a small smile. "You've completed everything," she said. "Next week, the judge will review your file. If all goes well, you'll get temporary custody in 2 weeks. In 2 more weeks, it would have been 42 days since I pulled him from the lake, and I would finally be close to bringing my grandson home." But that night, when I thought things were finally getting better, my phone rang. It was Laura. Her voice was tense. "Mrs. Carter, come to headquarters. Immediately, we found something related to Richard. You need to see it." I drove there, my heart tight in my chest. Laura was waiting by the door, her face more serious than usual. She led me down a narrow hallway to the interrogation room. On the table was a cardboard box, familiar items, Richard's wallet, his watch, his shattered phone, everything they had returned after the crash. "What's this?" I asked. Laura replied, "We finally managed to unlock Richard's phone. It took weeks and we found this." She opened an envelope and pulled out several printed pages, screenshots of text messages between Richard and Sylvie 2 weeks before his death. The first message was from Richard. "We need to talk about the baby." Sylvia replied, "I don't know what you're talking about." Richard. "I found the pregnancy test in the bathroom. Why didn't you tell me 3 hours of silence?" Then Sylvie wrote, "I wasn't ready to talk about it. I'm scared." "Scared of what? I'm your husband. We're going to be parents. That's wonderful." More silence. "Then I don't want to keep it." My heart felt crushed in my chest. I kept reading, hands trembling. "Don't want to keep it. What do you mean I'm not ready? I don't want to be a mother. I want to live to be free, not tied down. That's our child. It's a mistake. Don't say that. We'll get through this. I'll help you. My mother will help too. I don't need help. I need my life back." The messages piled up, Richard pleading, Sylvie cold. Until the last ones, the day before he died. "Sylvie, I've spoken with a lawyer. If you terminate the pregnancy, I'll file for divorce. If you give birth and don't want the baby, I'll take full custody. I won't let you hurt it." And the final message. "You'll regret this, Richard." No reply. The next day, Richard was dead. I dropped the papers, tears streaming down my face. "She killed him," I said hoarsely. "She killed him because he wanted to protect his child." Laura nodded. "We believe that too, and there's more." During that week, Sylvie called an independent mechanic named Carlos Medina 3 times. When confronted, he denied everything until we showed proof of a $2,000 transfer from Sylvie the day before the crash. He confessed she paid him to sabotage Richard's brakes. I felt dizzy and had to sit down. Sylvia had planned everything, hired someone to kill her husband, and staged it as an accident. Why did Carlos do it? Debt. He owed $15,000 to dangerous people. Sylvie paid him $2,000 up front, promised another $3,000 after. He agreed. He's now under arrest for accessory to murder. As for Sylvie, we've issued a warrant for first-degree murder and attempted murder, but she's vanished like a ghost. I sat there in that cold room trying to understand. My son died trying to protect his unborn child, and that same baby had survived by a miracle after his own mother tried to kill him. The cruelty of it was beyond imagination. "What now?" I asked. "We keep searching," Laura said. "Her photo's been sent to every airport, checkpoint, and hospital. No one disappears forever." But I wasn't so sure. Sylvia was clever, cold, methodical. If she could stage Richard's death so perfectly, she surely had prepared for her escape. That night, I returned to the hospital. I sat beside Matthew's incubator, watching him sleep, too innocent to know that simply by existing, he had cost his father's life. "Your daddy loved you," I whispered. and I'm here. Sophia brought 2 cups of coffee and sat beside me. I heard about the messages, she said softly. It's heartbreaking. I never knew Richard was that strong, I replied. He was always gentle, kind, but through those words, he was a warrior. Sophia nodded. Love makes people stronger than they ever imagine. She was right. I could feel it. Someone who once thought herself weak, was now fighting against the law, against time, against the killer, still hiding in the dark, all because of this child. In the following days, I prepared everything. I turned Richard's room into Matthew's nursery. I took down the band posters, the sports trophies, the college photos. I painted the walls a soft yellow, set up a crib and a changing table, and hung a small musical mobile that played lullabies. It broke my heart to dismantle my son's space, but I knew I had to. Richard was gone, and Matthew was alive. He needed a place to grow. Father Thomas came to bless the room. He sprinkled holy water and prayed for Matthew's protection for my strength, and for justice for Richard. I asked, what kind of plan could God have that allows a good man to be murdered and an innocent child almost killed? He said, a plan that turns evil into redemption. Sylvie wanted to destroy this family, but look, Richard left behind a legacy. You found a new reason to live, and this baby survived. Evil didn't win. Love did. I wanted to believe him. Some days I did. Other days, there was only darkness. The hearing was set for Tuesday. I wore my best outfit, the same one I'd worn at Richard's funeral. Marka went with me. We walked into a small courtroom where a woman judge about 50 years old with silver hair pulled back and a stern but kind face presided. She reviewed every document, my certifications references, home inspection reports, reading each page carefully. Finally, she looked up and said, Mrs. Carter, I've reviewed your file thoroughly. It's rare for a 63-year-old to petition for custody of an infant, but it's even rarer for a grandmother to have saved her grandchild from drowning. My heart pounded so hard I was sure everyone could hear it. I spoke with the hospital, the social workers, and your references. She continued, they all describe you as devoted, loving, and capable, and they all agree that this child is lucky you were there that day. Tears welled up, but I held them back. I've also read the criminal case. The suspicion that the child's mother murdered his father and then tried to kill her own baby. It's horrific, almost unimaginable. This child needs stability, love, and protection. She paused before saying, therefore, I'm granting temporary guardianship of the child to Mrs. Carter for 6 months. During that time, social services will visit monthly and evaluate progress. After 6 months, we'll consider granting permanent custody. Congratulations, ma'am. You are now the child's legal guardian. The sound of the gavel felt like air rushing back into my lungs. I broke down right there in the courtroom, crying from relief, gratitude, and fear all at once. Marka hugged me and whispered, you did it. Now you can take the baby home. 3 days later, 6 weeks after I pulled him from the lake, I brought Matthew home. Sophia helped me secure him in the car seat, carefully reminding me of everything. How to hold him, how to feed him, how to recognize signs of distress. He'll be fine, she said. And I'm just 1 call away if you need me. I drove home slowly. Every pothole made my heart jump. Every car that passed too close made me hold my breath, but eventually we made it home safely. I carried Matthew inside and laid him gently in the crib. His tiny body looked so fragile in that space, but he was breathing. He was alive, and for now, he was safe. Those first weeks with Matthew were the most exhausting of my life. I had forgotten how demanding a newborn could be. The sleepless nights, the sudden cries, the constant fear of doing something wrong. At 30, I had raised Richard with energy and youth, At 63, every sleepless night left me aching. There were also moments of pure grace when Matthew wrapped his tiny hand around my finger, when he stopped crying at the sound of my voice, when his dark eyes opened and met mine so much like Richard's. In those moments, I knew every hardship was worth it. Sophia came by 3 times a week. She taught me little tricks I had forgotten. How to burp him faster, how to swaddle him for better sleep, how to recognize the different kinds of cries. She wasn't just a nurse. She was a friend, a blessing. "You're doing great," she always said. But I didn't feel that way. I was still scared. Every strange noise at night made me jump. Every slow-moving car outside made my heart race. Sylvia was still out there somewhere. And even though the police believed she might have fled the country, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was close watching, waiting. I changed every lock-installed security cameras on the porch and installed an alarm system with professional monitoring, plus cameras covering every entrance. I spent $800 I didn't have, but Matthew's safety was priceless. 3 weeks after bringing him home, I stumbled upon something. I was sorting through Richard's old belongings boxes of clothes books and papers. At the bottom of one box, I found a worn brown leather notebook. I had no idea Richard kept a journal. My hands trembled as I opened it. The first entries were from years ago about work and friends, nothing significant. But then came the entries from his final year, the year he met Sylvie. "Today, I met someone." He wrote, "Her name is Sylvie. She's beautiful, smart, mysterious. There's something about her I can't quite understand. She intrigues me. The more I read, the more she appeared." Richard had fallen deeply, hopelessly in love, but hints of doubt began to creep in. Sometimes I feel like I don't really know her. She never talks about her family. Every time I ask, she dodges the question. It's as if her life started the day we met. Another entry said, "I caught Sylvie looking through my bank statements. She said she was just curious, but something about it unsettled me." Then came the part that shattered me, written just a month before his death. "Sylvie's pregnant. I found the test, but when I asked, she got angry. She said she doesn't want to keep the baby, that it'll ruin her life." How could she say that it's our child? Today I changed my will. Everything will go to the baby. I don't trust Sylvie with money, not after seeing her spend $500 on shoes and another $1,000 on a handbag. She always wants more. But a baby isn't jewelry. It's a life, and I'll protect it no matter what. My tears blurred the ink. Richard had known. He had seen the danger, recognized her greed, and tried to protect his child, a decision that cost him his life. The final entry was written the day he died. "Sylvie threatened me today. She said I'll regret it if I keep pushing about the baby. I don't know what she meant, but I'm scared. Tomorrow I'll tell Mom everything. Maybe she can help. All I know is that I can't let Sylvie hurt our child. I'll protect it always." He never got the chance to tell me. He died that night. I never knew he'd been so afraid that he saw the danger coming, but it was already too late. "My dear boy," I whispered to the notebook. "I'm sorry, I should have known. I should have seen something was wrong. But the past couldn't be changed. All I could do now was protect the future." The next day, I took the journal to Laura. She read it, her jaw tightening. "This is major evidence," she said. "It shows premeditation and clear motive. When we find Sylvie, this will end her." I asked, "When will that be?" "It's been almost 2 months. We're doing everything we can," she replied. "But she's clever. Probably using fake documents to leave the country. She could be anywhere." 3 days later, everything changed. I was feeding Matthew when the phone rang, an unknown number. Normally I wouldn't answer, but something told me to. "Hello," I said. Silence, then a faint breath, and then that voice. Hannah. It was Sylvie. My blood froze. I nearly dropped Matthew. I looked around the room as if she were hiding in the shadows. "Where are you?" I managed to say. "Where I am doesn't matter." She replied smoothly, "What matters is that I have something you want and you have something I want. I have nothing you need. I have the truth about what really happened to Richard, why I did what I did. I bet you want to know." "I already know," I said, trembling with anger. "I read Richard's journal. I know you killed him for money. You're a monster." A cold laugh. "A monster? How dramatic. You know nothing, Hannah. Richard wasn't the saint you think." "Shut your mouth," I snapped. "Don't you dare speak about my son." "Fine," she said. "Call the police if you want. By the time they trace this call, I'll be gone." Burn her phone. I'm not stupid. I forced myself to stay calm. I needed her to keep talking. I put her on speaker and grabbed another phone to record. "What do you want, Sylvie? I want my son. Your son." "You tried to kill him." That was a mistake, a moment of madness. I was scared alone. I didn't know what I was doing. But now I'm better. I want my child back. Never. Not unless I'm dead. "That can be arranged," she said, her voice chillingly calm. "Listen carefully. I want Matthew and I want the money from Richard's estate, $200,000 from the insurance and another $300,000 from the baby's trust, $500,000 in total. Everything Richard worked for belongs to my son. And if I refuse," I asked, "then I'll take it. I'm his biological mother. Legally, I have more rights than you. And when they catch me, I'll say you kidnapped my baby, that you threatened me, that you made up that lake story to keep him. My word against yours, and I'm younger, more believable, more sympathetic." I felt dizzy, but I kept recording. "How do I know you won't kill us both and take everything you don't? But it's your only choice. Bring the baby and the money to the old boathouse by the lake. You know, the one where you and Richard used to fish. Midnight tomorrow. Come alone. If I see any cops, I disappear and you'll never see me again. And eventually, I'll find a way to get Matthew back." "Wait, Sylvie," I cried. But the line went dead. I stood there shaking one arm, holding Matthew the other, clutching the phone. But I had the recording proof that Sylvie was alive and had threatened me directly. I called Laura immediately and sent her the audio file. "Perfect," she said. "Exactly what we needed. Now we'll set a trap." She explained the plan. "You'll go to the meeting point, but our team will be hidden nearby. When she shows up, we'll take her down." "What if something goes wrong, if she spots the police and runs?" I asked. "She won't," Laura said confidently. "Well, have officers positioned nearby and a team ready to move in at the signal. She's not escaping this time, and Matthew will be taken somewhere safe with Sophia. You'll just pretend to bring him." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Just one more day. I only had to survive one more day. Then Sylvie would finally pay for everything. For Richard, for Matthew, for all the pain she caused. That night I didn't sleep. I sat beside Matthew, memorizing every line of his face, in case things went wrong, in case I never saw him again. "Your daddy loved you so much," I whispered. "And so do I. Tomorrow we'll make sure you're safe forever." The next day dragged like a lifetime. Every minute felt like an hour. At 9:00 a.m., Sophia arrived to take Matthew. I packed his things as if he were leaving for weeks, even though I hoped it would only be hours. Diapers, formula clothes, his favorite blanket. My hands trembled as I placed each item in the bag. "He'll be fine with me," Sophia said, holding Matthew close. "I have your number and the police know my address. No one will touch him. I promise." I kissed her forehead, then kissed Matthew's cheek. His skin smelled like baby lotion and innocence. "I love you, sweetheart," I whispered. "I'll be home soon." I watched them drive away, the car disappearing at the end of the street, and it felt like a piece of my soul went with them, but I knew it had to be done. Matthew had to be somewhere safe in case everything went wrong. At 2 p.m., Laura arrived with 3 other officers, 2 men and 1 woman, all in plain clothes, all armed. They turned my living room into a command center, spreading laptops, maps, and radios across the dining table. "Let's review the plan," Laura said, pointing at the map. "The old boathouse has been abandoned for 5 years. There are 3 entrances: the front door, a side door, and a back exit. We'll cover all 3. She marked the positions in red. Snipers here and here on the rooftops across the water. They'll have clear sight lines through the broken windows. The tactical unit will wait behind, ready to move in at the signal. "What about me?" I asked, my voice calmer than I felt. "You'll go in, talk to her, keep her engaged. We need her to confess, to admit she killed Richard and tried to kill Matthew. You'll be wearing a hidden mic. Everything will be recorded." A tall young officer stepped forward holding a small device no bigger than a button. "Well, attach it here," he said, pointing just below my collar. "It transmits live. If you're in danger, press it 3 times quickly. We'll move in immediately." He let me practice pressing it 3 times in a row. My life now depended on remembering that simple motion. If she asks to see the baby, tell her he's in the car. Say you just want to understand why she did it, that you want to hear her side. Appeal to her ego. People like Sylvie love to brag. We spent the next several hours rehearsing every possible scenario. If she brought a gun, if she had someone with her, if the plan went wrong. My mind was spinning. At 8:00 p.m., they made me eat a cold, dry sandwich that tasted like cardboard, but I forced myself to swallow it. I needed the energy. At 10 p.m., they attached the microphone, tested the sound, and had me speak aloud, whisper, and shout to check the signal. "Remember," Laura said, looking straight at me, "you're not alone. Well, hear every word. Well, be right there. If there's real danger, we'll move in immediately." I nodded, trying to believe her, but inside fear coiled like a cold snake in my stomach. At 11:15, we set out. I drove my own car. Laura in the passenger seat crouched low so she wouldn't be seen. The other teams were already in position. The radio crackled, snipers in place, back team ready, perimeter secure. We arrived close to midnight. The old boathouse looked exactly as I remembered. Aged, peeling walls, broken windows, graffiti everywhere. Richard used to come here to fish with me when he was little. Those peaceful, happy days felt like a lifetime ago. Laura slipped out quietly and disappeared into the darkness. I stayed behind alone. I looked at my watch, 5 minutes until midnight. I closed my eyes and thought of Richard. His smile, his voice calling, "Mom." I thought of Matthew, of his future, a life without fear. My phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. "Come in alone." I opened the car door. The night air was sharp and cold. My breath turned white in the darkness. I walked toward the boathouse, each step echoing heavy and slow. The main door was slightly ajar. I pushed it gently. The hinges creaked, echoing through the empty space. Inside, it was pitch black except for a few pale streaks of moonlight through the broken windows. "Sylvie," I called, my voice hoarse. "Close the door." A voice answered from the shadows. It was her. I obeyed. My eyes adjusted to the dark, and then I saw her standing in the middle of the room, dressed in black jeans and a hoodie, her short blonde hair framing a thinner face, but unmistakably her. "You really came," she said, her tone icy. "You said you wanted to talk." "I want answers," I replied. "Why did you kill Richard? Why did you try to kill Matthew?" She laughed the same cold, metallic laugh I'd heard on the phone. "Because of money, Hannah. Richard loved me, gave me everything, but he was a foolish dreamer, always talking about family and the future. I wanted freedom, not a crying baby tying me down." Then why marry him, I asked. Because he was an engineer with a good salary, savings, and life insurance. It was an investment. I planned to wait a few years, then divorce and take half. But then I got pregnant, and that ruined everything. Her words were poison. You told him you didn't want the baby. Of course, she shrugged. But Richard changed his will, left everything to the child, so I had to adjust my plan. If he died while I was pregnant, I'd get the insurance. Once the baby was born, it would inherit the rest. Simple. Kill Richard, give birth, then kill the baby. I'd have it all. Every word was being recorded and transmitted live, but I needed her to keep talking. You hired Carlos to sabotage the brakes, didn't you? Yes, $2,000. A bargain compared to the $200,000 I got from the insurance. Best deal of my life. I clenched my fists, trying to stay calm. And the baby, your own child. A problem, she said flatly. I gave birth alone in a rented cabin, paid in cash. No one knew. I wore loose clothes, avoided people. Afterward, I planned to abandon it somewhere. But then I thought about the lake. How fitting to end everything where your precious family began. I felt sick. I wanted to scream, but I stood still, waiting for her to say more. But you failed, I said. I saved him. Yes, an inconvenience, she sneered. But that's fine. I'll finish the job now. Where is he, Hannah? You'll never touch him again. My voice didn't waver. She pulled a small gun from her pocket and aimed it at my chest. Last chance. Bring me my son. I pressed the panic button. 1, 2, 3. You'll never hurt him again, I said. Her finger tightened on the trigger. Everything slowed down. I heard a sharp crack and felt a burning jolt in my shoulder as I stumbled backward. I fell to the ground just as the room exploded with light. The door burst open. Shouts filled the air. Police, drop your weapon now. Sylvie turned surrounded. For a moment, I thought she'd shoot again, but instead, she dropped the gun and raised her hands. 3 officers rushed forward, tackled her, and handcuffed her. She screamed, cursed, threatened, but it was over. Laura ran to me, kneeling by my side. Hannah, stay with me. I'm okay. I groaned, though the pain in my shoulder was searing. Is she caught? Yes. It's over. Don't move. The ambulance is on its way. I closed my eyes. Finally, it was over. When I opened them again, I was in the hospital, but this time was different. No despair, only relief and peace. My shoulder was wounded. The bullet had passed through muscle but missed the bone. You're very lucky, the doctor said. 2 inches to the left and it would have hit your heart. Sophia sat beside me holding Matthew. When I opened my eyes, she smiled. Look who's awake. Someone's been missing you. I cradled Matthew with my good arm. He smelled of baby powder and warmth, cooing softly. Hello, sweetheart, I whispered. I'm okay. Everything's okay now. An hour later, Laura walked in with flowers and a tired smile. How are you feeling? She asked. Like someone who just got shot but alive, I replied. And Sylvie in custody. We're charging her with first-degree murder for Richard attempted murder of Matthew and you plus a dozen other counts. Conspiracy, fraud, obstruction. She would spend the rest of her life in prison. No parole. Those words were as sweet as honey. Justice had finally been served. The recording worked perfectly. She confessed to everything. Her lawyer tried to argue that I'd coerced her into saying it, but the jury saw the full footage. They saw her pull the gun. They saw her fire. No one felt any sympathy. After a short deliberation, they found her guilty on every charge. In the months that followed, I recovered slowly. Physical therapy for my shoulder was painful but necessary. Sophia still came by to help care for Matthew when I couldn't lift him. Father Thomas brought meals. Neighbors I had barely spoken to knocked on my door with food and kind words. She's a hero. One woman said what she did for that child, risking her own life. I thanked them, but inside I was still focused on one thing, keeping Matthew safe and healing enough to care for him. 6 months after Sylvie's arrest, I had another hearing. This one was different. The female judge smiled as she reviewed the documents. "Mrs. Carter," she said, "I've reviewed every report from the past 6 months' social worker visits, Matthew's medical records, progress evaluations, and I'm deeply impressed." My heart pounded. "This boy is thriving under your care, healthy, happy, loved. You've proven your capability despite extraordinary challenges. Therefore, I'm granting you full and permanent legal guardianship of Matthew effective immediately. Furthermore, since the child's biological mother is serving life and has lost all parental rights, you're authorized to begin the adoption process if you wish." Adoption. It meant he would officially be my son. Not just a grandson I cared for, but legally my child. "Yes," I said, without hesitation. "I want to adopt him then." "Congratulations," the judge replied. The gavel struck. The weight of months lifted off my shoulders. From that moment on, Matthew was mine. No one could ever take him away again. I left the courthouse with Matthew in my arms. He was 8 months old, chubby, always smiling. He giggled as I swayed him, tugging at my hair with his tiny fingers. Sophia and Father Thomas waited outside, hugging me tightly. We all cried tears of joy. "You did it," Sophia said. "You really did it." That evening, I made a special dinner, or as special as possible while juggling a baby. I invited Sophia and Father Thomas. We ate roast chicken and rice and toasted with apple juice instead of wine. To Matthew, Father Thomas said, "and his bright future." To Richard, I added, "who's watching over us, proud of his son." To love Sophia, said, "which always conquers evil." We ate. We laughed. Matthew clapped from his high chair, shouting with joy, not understanding, but feeling the happiness all around him. Months turned into years. Matthew grew learned to walk. At 11 months, he said his first word, "Mama." I cried when I heard it. At 2, he ran around the house. At 3, he started preschool. Every milestone was a miracle. Every day, a gift. I told him about Richard, showed him pictures, told him stories. "Your daddy was a good man," I said. "Brave, loving you even before you were born. He gave his life to protect you." "Daddy hero," Matthew chirped. "That's right, sweetheart. Your daddy was a hero and you'll grow up strong and kind just like him." I never told him about Sylvie. That story would come later when he was old enough to understand. For now, he only needed to know he was loved, wanted, and that someone had fought to keep him alive. On Matthew's 8th birthday, we had a party in the backyard. I invited all the neighborhood kids. There were balloons, cake presents. Matthew ran around laughing full of life, a world away from the blue, silent baby I pulled from the lake 5 years earlier. Sophia sat beside me on the porch, watching the children play. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. That day, I admitted if I'd looked out the window 5 minutes later, if I hadn't gone to the lake, everything might have been different. But no, I saw and I saved him. "Maybe it was destiny," Sophia said. "Or maybe it was Richard," I replied. "I think he guided my eyes to the lake that day because he knew I'd save his son." Or maybe Sophia smiled. "You're just a brave woman who never gives up." That night, after everyone left and Matthew slept soundly, I sat alone in the living room. On the wall hung photos, Richard as a child, his graduation, his wedding, and next to them new ones. Matthew as a newborn learning to walk his first day of school. 2 generations bound by love, divided by tragedy, but connected by survival. "We did it, Richard," I whispered to his photo. "Your son is safe, happy and growing strong, just like you wanted." Though I knew he couldn't answer, I felt his warmth, a quiet peace, filling the room. Maybe he was somewhere proud, grateful, content. He might have thought I was too old, too tired, too weak to be a mother again. But love makes people stronger than they ever imagine. It makes you fight when everything seems lost. It lights hope even in darkness. I don't know what the future holds. I know there will be challenges, hard days ahead. Raising a child at my age isn't easy. But every day with Matthew is a gift. Every smile, every hug, every love you grandma is a reward. When I watch him sleeping peacefully in the room that once belonged to his father, I see not just a child but a promise. The promise I made that day by the lake. To protect, to love, to never give up. People say it was luck that I looked out the window at the right moment. Some say it was fate. Maybe it was both. Maybe Richard led me there. But I know one thing for sure. When I saw that suitcase sinking beneath the water, when I heard the faint cry inside, when I felt the tiny heartbeat against my chest, I knew my life would never be the same. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for the child sleeping under this roof. Grateful to see Richard's eyes again, to hear laughter fill the house that once knew only sorrow. Grateful for another chance to love, to live with purpose, to understand that no matter how much we lose, there's always something precious left to hold on to. Tragedy comes for all of us sooner or later, taking away the people we love, our dreams, and our peace. But what we do afterward is what defines who we truly are. I could have given up when Richard died. I could have turned away when I saw Sylvie throw that suitcase into the lake. I could have told myself I was too old, too weak, too exhausted to be a mother again. But I chose differently. I chose to fight, to love, to believe that even from the ashes of loss, something new could grow. And it did. His name is Matthew. He's 5 now. Tomorrow he'll be 6, then 10, 20, 30, 40. A man with dreams, love, and maybe children of his own. I may not be here to see it all, but I know I've planted the seed. I've given him roots to stand firm and wings to fly. I've told him about his father, about Richard's love and courage, and that's enough. On nights like this, when the house is quiet except for the ticking of the old clock, I think about the woman I used to be, the one who lived with grief, lost in the past, resigned to life. Now I barely recognize her, because the woman I am today, the one chasing a 5-year-old through the yard, taping his drawings to the fridge, kissing scraped knees, chasing away monsters under the bed, is stronger than I ever thought I could be. And it all began with one choice: to run toward the lake instead of away from it, to open that soaked suitcase, even as my hands shook with fear, to fight for a future when the past had already tried to bury me. It wasn't easy. There were days when my back hurt so badly I could hardly stand. Nights when his crying nearly broke me. Moments when I questioned if I'd been foolish to become a mother again. But then, Matthew would smile, say, "Mama," in that clear, innocent voice, and fall asleep in my arms, trusting me to keep him safe. In that moment, I knew I'd made the right choice. Laura and Sophia are still part of our lives. Laura drops by sometimes with gifts for Matthew, asking how we're doing. Sophia has become almost like an aunt. She takes him to the park every Sunday, teaching him about birds and trees, giving him the extra love every child deserves. Each Christmas, Father Thomas visits to bless the house. He says Matthew is living proof of how God can turn tragedy into something good, how pain can become purpose. As for Sylvie, she's serving a life sentence with no chance of parole. She'll never harm Matthew or anyone again. Sometimes I wonder if she ever thinks about her child, if she regrets anything, if she ever felt even a spark of maternal love. But then I remember her eyes as she threw that suitcase into the lake, and I know the answer. Some people simply aren't capable of love, and Sylvia is one of them. She cared only about money, freedom herself. She saw Matthew as a burden, but to me, he's a miracle. Her loss became my gift, because every morning I get to hear his little footsteps in the hallway. see the bedroom door swing open and watch Matthew jump into my bed, his hair messy, his dark eyes just like Richard's, shining like sunrise. "Good morning, Grandma," he shouts, wrapping his tiny arms around me. And in that instant, every pain, every battle, every sacrifice is worth it. In that moment, I know I would do it all again if I had to. I'd face Sylvie, take the bullet fight the whole world just to have Matthew in my life. When people hear my story, they call me extraordinary brave. But I don't see it that way. I'm just a grandmother who did what any grandmother would protect her grandchild at any cost. The true hero of this story is Richard, the man who saw through Sylvie's deception, who changed his will to protect the child he'd never met, who was ready to fight for his son and paid with his life. And the true miracle is Matthew the baby, who survived against all odds, who fought for every breath, who brought light back to a house once drowned in sorrow. And me, I'm simply the bridge between father and son, the keeper of the past and the guardian of the future. And that's enough, more than enough. If one day life puts you before a choice like mine, what would you do? Share your thoughts below. I'd truly love to hear them. And if this story touched your heart, stay with me. There are so many more journeys ahead where together we'll keep finding strength, kindness, and the true meaning of one simple word.